and this is the Tuesday night session of our grief management series. I'm delighted that you all are here, and we're going to commence and get started. And I'm delighted that our facilitator, Rosalind Aaron, is equipped and prepared. And based upon the experience we had last night, I know that you're going to immensely benefit from what has been assembled for you this evening. Let's bow our heads for just a word of prayer. Oh Lord our God, we are indeed thankful for this sacred assembly, sacred space, and sacred place that we now occupy. We pray that you move in our midst so that all that we do proves to be pleasing in thy sight. Indeed, this is our prayer and our plea. In Jesus' name,
Jesus.
amen.
Amen.
Well, again,
Amen.
thank you all for your attendance tonight. As you know, this is a 6-week series on grief management, and our co-host and facilitator is Rosalind Aaron, and we have intentionally broken what was a 25 to 30 member group down into smaller groups of 8 to 10 people. Why? Because we want to have a great deal of interaction and involvement, and we want this to be an intimate setting. We want you to be comfortable to say what's on your heart, what's on your mind, to have some transparency and some trust level that the people who you are taking this journey with indeed have your best interests at heart. Now, with that said, let me yield and invite Rosalind Aaron to come greet us tonight. She has some opening remarks. And then I'm looking on the list, Sister Aaron, and I think we have one, two, three, at least 3 people, perhaps even 4, who've not had the opportunity to share like those of last week. So we're in your hands.
Okay, so good evening. Welcome and greetings, my brothers and sisters. Let me begin by saying that as you reflect on why you are here, one of the benefits of this intimate setting is that it allows all of us to share with each other without feeling that we are making each other uncomfortable. For those of you who did not share with us last week, I'm going to request that you share with the group your name, the name of your deceased loved one, their relationship with you, and finally, when and how they passed away. Although the feelings, emotions, and experiences are unique to everyone here can certainly understand and identify with your pain and your sorrow. As I indicated last week, everyone's grief journey and pathway to healing is unique. Last week, we identified the 5 most common stages of grief. My brother, my friend, Brother Gordon shared 2 additional ones, but in the interest of time and based on the most common stages of grief, it is denial, which is what we looked at to a degree of depth last week, anger, depression, guilt, and acceptance. We began with denial because it is the only stage among the 5 that comes with any practical degree of predictability. This week, we will explore and ask you to weigh in on another stage of grief, and that is anger. As you will see, it is important to note that it is not uncommon for our anger to be connected with guilt. But let's examine the ways in which anger itself is manifested in your experiences. Permit me to say the Grady Memorial Hospital staff were amazing. They were patient, helpful, informative, all around wonderful, save one. And I've since referenced her as a real, all the way live Nurse Ratchet. It is as though she was trying to bait me into a confrontation that I assure you would never take place. They had my beloved. I could not run the risk of saying or doing anything amiss that could result in him being mistreated. Months later, the very thought that she could have been on duty the night that my beloved drew his last breath, and I don't know that she probably wasn't, but it made me angry. Months later, listening to the numbers of my fellow citizens perishing at the hands of COVID-19, seemingly out of nowhere, I asked, well, what if a person dies from cancer, diabetes, heart attack, or complications from a stroke like my beloved? They don't matter? Why are they not reflected in those numbers? It was neither logical nor true. Certainly he mattered to me. I know he mattered to God. He was no longer in pain. But I had to intentionally, mentally unpack it in order to get on the pathway to healing. Most things that call into question our control over the matter can lead one to feeling a personal loss of that control. And that can translate into frustration and ultimately anger. So let's take a short journey. Jesus finally arrives in Bethany at the home of Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. And John 11:33 tells us that when Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger, this is the New Living Translation, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. Where have you put him? He asked them. So know this, just like I came to the point of understanding that I had to unpack my anger and find some truth and some logic in it. You can only begin on the pathway to healing when you determine that what you're experiencing, number one, the anger is normal. And when you choose to unpack it, as written in St. John 32, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So following Bishop's invitation to those of you all who have not yet had an opportunity to share your story, I invite you to join me in setting a mood as we continue on this twofold expedition of the grief journey and the pathway to healing. Bishop?
Thank you so much, Sister Erin. And so I'm looking over our list, and there will be some additional involvement and exercising that we're going to do a little later on. But before I turn it back to Sister Erin for her more formal presentation, I do believe that just about everyone has had an opportunity to share uh, their loved one, the circumstances of their death, and who they are, accepting that of Denise Jackson, who is with us tonight, and then Superintendent Timothy Tring. We're so delighted to have him. He's a new cleric in our community, and he heard about this was going on. I had an opportunity to share with him earlier. He's a dear friend of Pastor Bruce Green, and so following the comments and the sharing of Sister Jackson, Sister Denise, we're going to ask Superintendent Trent if he would weigh in and share with us. I do see an iPhone, and I'm not sure who that is. Can you identify yourself?
It's probably neat. Bishop Besnet. Helen seems to.
Okay, Sister Singster, bless you, Bishop Designate. I'll change your name so
Just
that we
Helen
can
tonight.
identify you. All righty. Sister Jackson, we have certainly been praying for you and just so delighted to see you tonight. And we're anxious to hear from you this evening.
Okay, hi. I found out my mother had cancer 2018. Let me just fast forward it. Me and my mother was my best friend. She was everything. During this journey of cancer, I would fly between South Carolina and New York. I was basically there all the time. When it came time for, how can I put it? My mother had, the cancer went from her lymph nodes, and months later, it ended up going to her brain. She had brain surgery. We went to an appointment on February 23rd in 2020, saw the neurologist, and he said everything was going well. I will see you back in a month. 25 minutes later, me and my mother's in the ER. 15 minutes later, she goes for a CAT scan. She comes back. She has a seizure. We're in the hospital for 2 days. And then on that Thursday, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
I find out from the neurologist that my mother's cancer done spread all through her brain. But the way that she said it to me, she was like, look at the screen. You see the screen? You see, this is your mother's brain. Here, all over. It done spread. I'm sorry. She's going to die in 24 hours. And she walks away. So now I'm looking like, what is this woman talking about? So I had to call somebody. Thank God I know people in that hospital in Florence, South Carolina. And I called the head nurse, and she came and she explained everything to me. And she said, don't worry, tomorrow you're going to have to go and get Dad. And you're going to see 5 different doctors. It's going to come and explain to you what the procedure is from here on. So now I'm mad because I can't tell my father that my mother's going to die. I can't tell my brothers. I can't tell nobody. So I got to hold it in. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I was mad as heck because I had to go and get Dad. Now, where they lived is an hour away. And in my mind, I didn't want to leave because I didn't want my mother to die alone. You understand what I'm saying? Because
Sure.
if you're telling me that she only has 24 hours to live, I don't want to leave. So now I got to go and get Dad. And now I'm mad because I got to get him. Yes, I love him. Don't get what I'm saying wrong, but my mother is everything to me. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Anyway, that Friday morning, I had to go get Dad. I called him, told him to be ready. Got to the house, got him, came back. We saw all these different doctors. And every time a doctor came in and started talking, there's no such thing as a church finger. But I turned around and said, can you step outside? And I was talking to them. I said, listen, stop telling this man a lie. Just tell him the truth. Just tell him the truth, because I heard the truth yesterday. So when Dr. Tasmanian came in, I was on the phone video chat with my brother, and he said, listen, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm the most radical doctor there is. And if there's a chance, if there's 5% chance, I'm going to go in. And he said, there's no chance. So basically, she got like 48 hours to live. My brother's on the phone. He was like, what are you talking about? He took the phone from my hand and told my brother, y'all in New York, y'all need to come down now. So I'm like, okay, fine. That day was a Friday. We had to take my mother to hospice. We did all that. My father walks out. I'm mad as hell. I'm sorry for cursing. I am mad because now he walks out and he's walking down the 95. We're an hour away. Where you going? Because he didn't want to face the fact that my mother was laying there. And at that moment in time, I didn't care about him because I was worried about my mother. Again, I didn't want her to die alone. But then I had to leave her because I had to get him. You understand? Fast forward, my brothers came. Man said 48 hours on a Friday. My mother lived to the following Sunday. My brothers was there. My uncle came. As soon as my brothers hit New York, a half an hour later, my mother died. I stayed the whole time with her in hospice. Here's where the anger part comes in. I stayed with her. That Saturday, her breathing wasn't right. And I knew that it was time for her to go. My girlfriend called me. She said, you got to lay there in the bed with your mother and tell her it's okay. And I didn't want to do that, but I did. I laid in the bed. I told Mom, it's okay. You can go now. I'm at peace with it. I had to be at peace with it because I think she was holding on, waiting for me to say it was okay in my mind. So I did that. That Sunday, the nurse said, and the doctor came and said, you got to go and get your dad. And I'm saying to myself, I got family down there. Why can't someone bring him? Everybody ain't going to church. So now I'm like pissed. because now I got to drive an hour to go and get him and then drive an hour to get back. And then when I got back, I looked at my mother. She took her last breath. She died. And I was mad because I had to go and get him to bring him to see her. And I felt it wasn't fair. Again, I love him. Don't get what I'm saying wrong, but I was mad. And then my mother passed. Fast forward, I didn't have time to grieve. I had 5 days to get my mother's funeral together. Down south is different. You had to turn around and they come the same day. They bring the registry, the chairs, and all this other stuff I had to do, and get my mother's obituary. I had to do all this less than 24 hours. I had to get everything together. But yet, I still had to deal with dad because dad also had cancer. So we buried mom, but I still got to go back and forth, because I still had to take him to his appointments. I had to make sure everything was right with him. 7 months later, he passed. I still haven't grieved my mother to this day because I feel I ain't got time. It's too much I got to do. And I'm surrounded with love, but I feel alone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So much.
Feel you. Superintendent.
God bless you, Bishop.
Bless you, sir.
I have not had a death that I had in denial. I haven't been through that kind of experience or nothing about death, because when people died, I just accepted and said, thank the Lord, and kept it moving. So I have not been in a denial. Neither have I been in anger. I lost my sisters. I lost some of my brothers. Lost cousins. Almost lost my mother. I'll never forget that. But I have not been in it. But I'll tell you one thing. I'm praying for Sister Jackson because I can see that she's still grieving. And the only thing I can say is, let the grief continue. Nobody try to stop her from grieving. It ain't good to stop people from grieving. Let them grieve in their own way. So, we praying for her. I have nothing really to say, Bishop.
Okay. That's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing.
Thank you. I think those are the two persons that have not had opportunity to share. Did I miss anybody else? I think just about everybody else on this list was able to share with us on last week. If not, Sister Erin, we're back in your
Okay.
hands.
And if you be kind enough to allow me to share my screen.
You're good.
Okay, can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay, let me go back and make sure that I'm sharing my screen. How's about
Okay.
that?
It's coming in now.
Okay. I just want to move this in a way where I can actually see what's going on. So to just quickly recap, I want to set a mood for what we are going to actually experience here this evening before we go into the nuts and bolts of the anger. People are dying. People are crying for a savior to come and save us from this world. Now God. Uh-oh. Sorry. What just happened? I'm calling your name, 'cause my world does need change. searching for a father to come and guide us from this world. Now, God, I'm depending on you, 'cause only you can pull us through this fight. Then we will be alright. So God, we need you to pull us through. Here I am, Lord, please take my hand. I can do no more. God, you're in control. I can't win this fight, but with you, I'll be alright. I'm depending on you to pull us My brothers and sisters, I am going to very, very briefly just recap what we spoke of last week. The denial in grief is the only stage of grief in any predictable order. The first reaction to the loss of a loved one is denial. Because in this stage, individuals believe that there has to be a mistake, something is wrong, even when we have cared for that individual through an illness. There's a clinging to a preferable reality. Okay, what y'all doing? Where am I going on? Okay. So this week, we want to look at, explore, and examine how anger plays a role in the grief process. When the individual recognizes that denial cannot continue, they become frustrated, especially at proximate individuals. These are the people who are the closest to us. Certain psychological responses of a person undergoing this phase would be something like, why me? It's not fair. How can this happen to me? Who's to blame and why would this happen? One of the more interesting things that we find with the loss of a loved one is that after the loss of a loved one, you will notice that the rest of the world appears to begin moving around like nothing has happened. People are going to work, school, shopping. They're doing all these different things and as though everything is normal. But for you, life is anything but normal. So allow me to start by saying, acknowledge why grief obliterates. It erases any sense of normalcy, routine, or regularity, and how the pressure of that gives us a sense of thinking that we have to appear to be normal. And when you do this, beloved, be aware that that can actually affect the way that you grieve. So let's talk about some of that total change that goes on. One of those things is the interruption of normalcy. I'm trying to, bear with me, I'm trying to move my screen so that I can actually see what I am saying to you. Persons who are grieving have to recognize and acknowledge that their entire being has been impacted. Everything about them has been impacted. People who are grieving do some very strange things. A person who's fairly disciplined or very organized might find that things that they do routinely can be interrupted. Things like going to your car and you can't find your keys, or completing a fairly repetitive project at work, only for it to be returned to you littered with mistakes that you've never made in the past. And here's where I have to issue a serious warning, because when we do not address and embrace our grief, it has been known that it may very well cost an individual their job, because the interruption of normalcy is normal. So let's talk about forgetfulness. All of the preparations, the plans, and everything you've done for this final event for your loved one, completely forgetting everything that followed their passing, the memorial, the homegoing service, all of that. Now you're going to a familiar restaurant. You don't know what to wear. When you get to the restaurant, you've been there a dozen times, but you don't know what to order. Then there's an inability to be able to concentrate. And this is why when you are grieving, you are encouraged to be extremely careful before you get behind the wheel of a car, because when driving, you can get into an accident or you can even get a ticket. So let me ask the question. Have you ever been driving and you can't remember the last 10 blocks? It's like that. Believe it or not, it's normal. And then there is a lack of focus. And that is because your ability to focus has become altered. It changes. Things that you have been doing perhaps for years. You're going to school to pick up your child. And so you get on the carpool line, and now it's your turn, and you pull up to the loading station, and you sit there and you wait for a few moments. And then you pull off, only to realize your precious cargo is not in the car. This can yield anger. Now I have to go back, and I have to get back at the end of the line of the carpool. A student, after a school shooting, acknowledging that before the shooting, they knew all of the material for the test that was scheduled for the following day. Afterwards, it was as though they had never seen the material before, asking, what has happened to my brain? It's like it all just got wiped away. Imagine the frustration of a student who has studied and now they get there and it looks like Greek. It can certainly result in anger. And then there are individuals who just want to get on with it. For some, it is not comforting at all to accept the idea that it is normal for grief to be a painful experience. Their response may be that they don't care that it's normal because they feel that that's not helping them and they just want it to go away. So then there are those Christians who will say, well, will people think that I'm not really a Christian because of my grief? And then some, absolutely meaning no harm whatsoever, may urge you to be strong, gird up. You're going to be all right. Others may esteem you for not crying or openly grieving. And this is why it is important to understand that grieving is a totally consuming experience. Here is a proper response to loss. There were good and honorable reasons that you hurt so deeply and for so long. Grief is a celebration of a good gift from God, and it is expressed through our tears. Am I doing something wrong? So, beloved, I urge you, resist suppressing your grief. Suppressing your grief is like putting your emotions and your feelings in a jar or a container that has limited capacity. And by repressing them, you will eventually think that you are burying them. But know this, your emotions and your feelings are alive. And eventually they will be resurrected. But the problem is that you will not have control over your emotions. They will emerge at inappropriate times when you overwork yourself because you just don't want to talk about it. You don't want to deal with it. You just don't want to face it. But over time, when they overflow, you will be impatient, irritable, and intolerant. You'll find yourself fussing and complaining and whining all the time. Resist suppressing your grief. Release it, talk it out, and relax. See, before you were not connecting that your reactions were because you were blocking the feelings of grief. As you release the emotions, you become more relaxed, thus less irritable. Many people incorrectly believe that it is normal to move through different stages of grief in a sequential way. However, many who have experienced going through grief will assure you that there is nothing predictable or orderly about the grief journey. So as you begin to move forward, do the next right thing, the things that you have been doing all your life. Grief and suffering can immobilize you, almost cause you to be paralyzed to a certain degree. It could be something as simple as getting a glass of water to keep from becoming dehydrated, or taking a shower so that you're not offensive to others, or even brushing your teeth. This is why where you are now is the best place to be as you wrap your arms around, wrap your head around what you are feeling. And that is committing to a bereavement support group and stick with it, where you can talk freely about your grief without feeling like you're causing other people to be uncomfortable. It's hard to imagine of another way to find healing without a bereavement or grief support system or group, and I have to say this very, very quickly or off script. People who look like us for centuries were not allowed to grieve. And under those circumstances, there is something that takes place in the grieving process that is very necessary, because death is a part of living. So to deprive one of not being able to grieve is a terrible injustice. It's hard to fathom dealing with the trauma. I'm going to say it again, trauma of grief and solitude on your own, flying solo with just a few books and a couple of videos. I assure you, the bereavement or group or grief support system experience can be liberating. So please, my brothers and sisters, I want you to be encouraged, because it will get better. When you feel like you can make it one more day, one more week, just another month, you begin to see the seasons begin to change, and then there will be little ounces of joy. You'll smile or you laugh, and you won't realize it at the time, but when you do, you'll say, I smiled, I laughed, and it felt good. The Bible says that there is a time to mourn, and it will hurt. You'll experience pain, and it will hurt for a long time, but it won't hurt forever. It won't hurt with the same intensity that you've experienced. So as we drill down and we come to a bit of a close, if you will, to where we are, the people who love and care about you really, really need to know, and only you can share with them what you need from them. Family and friends really want what's best for you during this difficult time. However, when they are unclear about your specific needs, it may result in a more painful outcome. Your best friend comes over, you've lost your spouse. They go directly to your closet and begin to unpack their clothes and start putting them away. It's time for you to move forward. You need to move on now, and I'm going to help you do that by doing this. Consider communicating with them the old-fashioned way, by penning a letter. By all means, use the platform that is comfortable for you. Yes, maybe you want to send a text that looks like a novel, or you want to send them an email, or you want to put a stamp on an envelope and send it to them through the snail mail, or you want to put a message in a bottle. When those who are close to you know your needs, they can provide the help that is the best fit for you. Briefly share your experience and your feelings. As you're penning this letter, there will be things that come to mind. Take your time in doing what you're doing. We're saying briefly, and I'm going to reference one of the things that we talked about earlier, and that is how we feel that others are uncomfortable when we talk about our grief with them. But when you're penning a letter, you can take your time and do it the way that you need to. Take as long as you need to. Pen that letter. Let people know what they can anticipate from you. It might be a lot of tears. You may just want to be alone. You might not be answering your phone. You might not be responding to your voicemails. Let people know what they can anticipate from you. Share with them what they can do and articulate. What can they say to you that you find encouraging and consoling? It may be just knowing that you're praying for me makes a difference. just knowing that I can call on you and you'll come over and help me clean my room or wash my dishes or vacuum my floor or wash my clothes. If that's encouraging, share that with your loved one. List precise, specific, and practical essentials that they can help you with. Finally, do a personal checkup on a weekly basis. This is session 2. Track your healing progress. Place a check in the box identifying how you feel, and then insert why you've used the words. Why you insert words to explain why you feel really bad emotionally, physically, spiritually, or relationally, or why you feel okay, why you feel pretty good, or why you feel great. And please be sure that you do each and every one of these feelings. How are you feeling emotionally, physically, spiritually, and relationally? That was my last one. Bishop, I am going to stop the share. I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I am certainly open for any questions or comments that you may have. Uh-oh, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Thank you, Sister Erin. And I'm sure all of you recognize that there has been a goodly amount of material and information that has been presented tonight. And I would imagine that there are questions that you may have on certain sections or parts, or even reactions to what has been listed, what has been described, what has been communicated tonight. We have several minutes that's left, and this is your time to weigh in. And again, we have kept these groups small and intimate so that you would have time to share your feelings, to share your thoughts, to share your responses and reactions, and to feel comfortable that you're not talking amongst a large group and maybe people who you don't know. And I also recognize that some of you may not know the others who are in even this group very well. And I encourage you to take the time to get to know them. We are family. And this is what's key here is that we are a support group. And support can only be done if there is a trust factor that's involved. And so I'm going to cease. Invite you to open your microphones and whatever you want to say, whatever comments you want to make, observations you want to make. If this is helping you, if you need something else, help steer this conversation in the direction that you need it to go. I'm sure that Rosalind would appreciate a goodly amount of feedback from you. Obviously, she's done a goodly amount of work and research on this topic. And so we're here to hear from you. Who would like to go first? Don't everybody speak at the same time.
I just like to say the information was excellent, and and I really think it's something that is needed, especially with our people, because I remember years ago when well, I've had a series of deaths, but when my mother died, I had to take care of everything and went through the motions, and I actually did not do a self-check. And because of that, I lost a block of memory, really, because I was so busy making sure that everyone else was okay, and I didn't do the personal self-check for myself. I thought things were well, and thank God, I came out okay, but that taught me to go through that self-check and do those things. So this is just excellent information. It's because I've always felt that grieving is really a lifetime, but it's how you go about it in the different levels, but you never stop. And so it's important that we recognize that. And sometimes, people will say, well, she's strong or he's strong, and you feel like, but I tell people to take time to really grieve in your own ways, because you can physically like be affected by it. You can emotionally be affected. And so it's just important that we as men and women not want to play the hero. And we may not think we're doing that, but we really need to get in touch with ourselves, our inner person.
God bless you, Bishop. Thank you so much, because a number of the things you just mentioned over the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about that.
Sister Rosalind, I didn't say it last night. I was holding it for my night, but I wanted to say I did appreciate and still appreciate the presentation. Did an excellent job. I really think, as Bishop Designate said, that is something that is worthwhile for all of us, and not just in this setting, but somehow we can get it out to the masses. I really think it's really worthwhile. But I have a question, and I heard what Bishop Designate said, that grieving is a lifetime experience. Is there a point in the process of grieving that you say to the individual, not so much it's enough, but how much can they continue down that road where they don't feel like they're turning around? Is there a point where they need to turn around?
I absolutely understand that question. And that's the uniqueness of the journey. Because with some people, and a lot of it is going to be contingent on the relationship you had with them. Not everyone grieves to the extent that one grieves when they've lost a loved one, or being married 40, 50, 60 years. That can be very hard. In some cases, it can actually manifest itself in relief. If it's a relationship that was burdensome to them. And I don't mean caring for a person that before they pass away. I'm not talking about that, because Sister Denise is going to be in her space dealing with what she's dealing with for a while. Her mother was like her best friend. And under those circumstances, it really can take a while. So it depends on the relationship that you had with that other individual. I can speak for myself. When I think of my beloved, I can't even begin to imagine anyone else. Like, I ain't got nothing left. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just trying to be real. I can't imagine. And I may have said this last night. I may have said it last week. A year. We had a garden memorial for him. He loved to work outside. But a huge picture we had in the backyard for the memorial that we had for him. And I got to the point, I had that picture right here in this room for over a year. And I remember looking at, and I know how well he knew me. And eventually, I said, okay, it's like I can hear him. So, right, Rosalind, it's time for you to move forward now. You need to move forward. You need to take that picture down. I took the picture down. I took the frame down. I cried for 4 hours. I went and picked up the stand. I went and got the picture, put it back. I said, Daddy, I just ain't ready. I'm just not ready. And then I got to the point where I could actually make a joke about it. I said, I'm sitting up here, and every morning I look in that mirror, I see another crow trying to crawl across my face. I said, but you ain't aging a bit. Let me go ahead and put the picture on the way so that I can move forward. Not move on. There is a difference. But to move forward, because as Bishop would say, we're still here in the earth realm for a reason, my brothers and sisters. We still have work to do. There's something that we still have to do in giving God glory for why we are still here. Did that help?
Oh, yes. It explains why some individuals do take much, much longer than others. And I like what you said, that is the relationship you had with the deceased that would cause how that grief plays out. So yeah, very, very informative. Thank you.
God bless you.
I have a question.
Amen.
I don't know where to go from here. I'm still dealing with my mother's personal business. I want that to be over so I can move on, so to speak. It'll be 2 years in March, and I need to get out where I'm at, because I can say for myself, I have put on a facade for so long. I don't know how to be who I am. And I'm being real.
God bless
Mike
you.
checks on me all the time. You know what I'm saying? But for me to be who Dee Dee is, Dee Dee don't know who Dee Dee is, because this whole time, hi, how are you? You put the facade on for so long, the facade is now me. I need to come back to who I am. I have not stepped foot in the church since I buried my mother on March 14th. I get anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I need to talk to her, I book a flight and I go down to Charleston, South Carolina, rent a car, drive an hour and 15 minutes, get some flowers, get a chair from the house, and sit there and talk to her as if she's here. Because that's what I need to do for me. So as I have that conversation with her, because she's on the left side, and then my dad's on the right side. I talk to mom first, then I talk to dad, then I talk to them together, and then I turn around and fly back. I'm only there for not even 24 hours. I say what I need to say and I come back. But I'm still at that place and I need to get out. But I just don't know how.
If I may, lean into your grief. Lean into it, because at the end, what's going to happen is that you are going to emerge and you're going to realize you're not that same person anymore. You will acknowledge your new identity. You have a new identity that is forming as you allow it to form, to do different things. Like when you talk about business, you may want to reach out to somebody that you know cares about you, that you can actually talk to about how you feel. As it relates to business, talk to someone who knows about what it is that you need some counsel on or some direction on, particularly when it comes to business, because this is a very vulnerable time. It's an extremely vulnerable time. And it's vulnerable because when you have to make business decisions and things of that nature, it's very important. Did I lose my sister?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. My bad. It's important to know that, and we're going to deal with this as well. So hang in here with us, Sister Denise. Hang in here with us. We're going to talk about how there is a new you. I had a very difficult time with that, but there is a new you in you, and you will discover it. You will come across it. You may find that new you that's in you, all that you poured into your mom, you may find that the one thing that releases you to being your new you is doing something on behalf of somebody else who may be going through what you're going through, or they may not be going through what you're going through. But you're going to find an empowerment when you reach out to others. But let me get ahead of myself. But I want to share that with you to encourage your heart. When you do something for others, that's a part of your pathway to healing. Does that help?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sure. And you all have my number. It's on the emails that I send you. You are welcome to call me at any time. Anyone else? Bishop, it's 8:00. But is there anyone else? I know you're a stickler for time, Bishop.
Two things. There are some exercises that's incorporated in the lesson of tonight. And Rosa, I'm going to ask if you would take the initiative, because you have everybody's email address.
Mhm.
If you could separate both the contents of the grief letter that people may need to send to others to clearly and accurately let them know what it is that they need. And then that chart at the end. I think those are two documents. If we could create two separate documents and send that to all of your participants, that
No
would be
problem.
helpful. In addition to that, we're making a video of tonight's lesson because there may have been something that was said. Maybe you missed it. Maybe you just need to go back and hear it again. And so we'll make a recording of tonight's session. And part of Sister Aaron's future communication with you will be a link to where tonight's session is available for you to review. And we'll do that for the next 4 weeks as well. So that at the end, you will have a library of material that you will have accumulated as a result of your being a part of this series. Is there anything else? Does anybody have anything else they just
Right.
they want to say? Any comment they want to make before we close tonight? This is your time. Sister Aaron, do you have anything else?
Sister Deidre?
Hi, good evening. I couldn't hear everyone earlier when we started, so good evening, everyone. I do have a question, but it'll probably take a few minutes probably for you to respond, Sister Rosalind. How do you bring closure when you've had loved ones pass away and you still feel the guilt? And I say guilt because I've had 3 situations where someone very close to me passed away, and I was not able to make it back to Barbados for the funeral. The first person um, was and I always say my aunt, but she was really my cousin that raised me from 2.5 years old. Um, because my parents didn't raise me. I saw them every weekend and every holiday, but she raised me. I went to her school, the Unique High School. When she had the heart attack, the first heart attack, they called me, and I went to Barbados, and she was in a coma. And I stayed there. She was in the coma for, they induced the coma because she had the massive heart attack, and she had diabetes, and she was going into kidney failure. And I stayed there 2 weeks, but I had to come back because I had to come back to work. On the day that I returned, they took her off of the life support. And I found out about half an hour before I got on the plane that that's what her sister, who's 25 years younger than she is, decided to do, because they said she will not come out of that. And I came back, and she died 2 days later. She died February 14th, in the year 2000. And I have lived with that guilt of not making it back to see her buried. Then my aunt, my mother, one of my mother's younger sisters, who I was very, very close to, and if I'm saying the wrong thing, may God forgive me, I was closer to her than I was to my own mom. She died. And when she died, I got the call. I was on the Hollywood coach bus on the way to, I think it was Riverhead, to a service one evening. And I got the call that she had passed away. And unfortunately, I could not make it back then as well. So every time, and now this aunt that just passed last week, I'm not going to make it to her funeral either for multiple reasons. Every time someone passes away, the emotion that I feel is almost as if it just happened. I have never brought closure to those first 2. how do you bring closure in a case like that? I mean,
Next
just
week.
all right. I
I'm
figured as
sorry,
much.
will you finish?
Um, as I hear Sister Jackson talk about her mom and what she went through, I am right now have those emotions coming up again to the point that I want to cry because I'll never see her again. I didn't get to see her when she was buried. What do I do?
I
You
can
know, and
remember,
it's
I can remember telling the doctor and the nurses, I will gladly drive 2 hours for just 5 minutes to rub his head, because he loved for me to rub his head. There are some things that are beyond our control. And that's why I said what I did earlier in terms of we're in COVID. They're not letting anyone
and
into when there are circumstances beyond your control, it's a challenge to deal with the guilt. But when there's nothing that you could have done differently that would have changed that outcome, unpack it, because the truth will set you free. You know you had to come back to go to work. You know that each time you went, that there was something that was going on. Work with what you know. What you know. If you can find a way in your mind and your heart that tells you that you could have been there, you know that you were not there because you could not be there. That's a circumstance that's beyond your control. That's what drives guilt, are the circumstances beyond our control. My yoke is easy, my burden is light, because you know they're in a better place. Be encouraged to know that when you don't have control over the situation, give it to him. Give it to him. That's the best way to unpack it. We have limitations as human beings. And when it's something that we have no control over, and I know it sounds like, well, that's easy for you to say, but I get it. I get it. Michael, my husband knew, I know, only God can move heaven and earth, but my husband knew if I could have moved heaven and earth to see him in that hospital, those 10 days before he passed away, wow. I had no control. That was a part of my unpacking. Does that help? Does it make sense?
it makes sense.
And it's a process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's 2 years, but you don't have to get in a hurry. Once you know what you're dealing with, that will help to translate into your pathway to healing. Stop beating up on me. I got to stop beating up on me. God's using you. He wants you strong. I want to say, daughter, he wants you strong. And that goes for all of us, because I promise you, and it's normal. And that's the topic for next week. It's guilt. It's guilt.
Well,
Thank
beloved,
you.
I charge you to go in peace. I charge you to go in joy. I charge you to go in love, and I charge you to go in happiness, because the author of peace, love, joy, and happiness goes with you. Listen, we look forward to seeing you next week. As you see, this is a very engaging, intensive, emotionally packed time that we're spending. But I think it is so, so necessary, because, as Sister Jackson said to us tonight, we specialize in the facade, and we put forth a face because we don't want people to see how much we're hurting. In this space, in this time, in this setting, you are given license to hurt and to express yourself. We'll see you next week. God bless.
Love.